Hello, and welcome back to episode 7 of When Life Feels Messy.
Hello.
I am one of your wonderful hosts, Erin Raspberry.
And I am one of your wonderful hosts, Ashley Barrera. Happy February.
Happy February. Can you believe it?
No, like, why is it actually February? I don't understand.
Literally, how did 31 days already pass?
Like, I was just preparing for January, but then that's done and gone now.
I know. I literally am like...
How and why?
I just feel like we're still about to go into the holidays, so this is crazy. I feel like as we get older, time passes so much more quickly.
I literally said that yesterday.
Really?
Yeah.
That's crazy. My mom always used to tell me that, and I don't think I ever believed it because it was like high school felt so slow all the time.
Literally.
But now I'm like, every time I have a birthday, I'm like, my God, a next birthday is about to be right around the corner. Like, it goes so fast. It's crazy.
Oh my gosh. Literally.
But thanks for that little rant.
Yeah, circle back to
Circle
today's
back.
episode.
Which is a very exciting topic. Would you think so?
I would say so, yes. It's very... This is one of my favorite passionate things about mental health.
Ooh, do tell.
Because it's caring for yourself, self-compassion, self-love, a fundamental thing that we were not taught.
No. Foreshadowing.
Or, yeah, foreshadowing. Taught or, like, I know for me, I didn't know any of my friends that were like, hey, or their parents or, you know, adults were like, hey, make sure you take care of yourself. Like,
oh, yeah, like, what was that?
Yeah.
Like, I don't think I ever heard anyone say that until I got into adulthood.
Yeah.
And then it was like, excuse me? What does that mean?
Exactly. I need definitions.
Right.
Oh, you're telling me to make my own definitions? Yikes.
Oh, awkward, yeah. But, yes, this is a very exciting topic.
Mm-hmm.
You know, February is the month of love, right? Like, Valentine's is, like, throwing up everywhere in stores. All you see is red, pink, stuffed animals, flowers that are outrageously priced.
Giant stuffed animals.
Yes.
Like,
oh, those freak me out. Oh, I hate those things.
Ginormous, like, things of candy.
Yeah.
Like those big old kisses. Anyways, we're getting too much deep into this. February is a symbol of love.
It is. But in our true mental health fashion, where we take a spin on everything, we decided that this month is going to be about when you feel that you're the exception to unconditional love. Dun, dun, dun.
Dum, dum, dum.
Okay, so really looking at this phenomenon that I think that we see so much, especially working with, like, individuals and even in, like, personal experience, is why is it so easy to provide this, like, unconditional love, this support and acceptance and, like, all this energy into everyone else but ourselves?
Yes, and when it comes to ourselves, we always view ourselves as the exception, right? And we feel like we can't do that for ourselves. Like, we don't know how to begin, but we can easily and readily
do it for everyone else. Yeah, and I think that's, like, in my mind, the kind of dumbfounding part is, like, we're able to do it. We know what that looks like to, like, meet people where they're at and accept them and love them and, like, be there for them through all their struggles. I mean, how many times do you, like, hear people that are so supportive, like, if you're going through something, like, especially mental health wise.
Yep.
And then they turn around, go through their own stuff, and they're, like, the worst and meanest person to themselves. And it's like, why do we feel like we're the exception to this unconditional love rule and that everyone else deserves it but us?
Yeah. When we were talking about this episode topic and coming up with the key points that we wanted to touch on, we kind of also touched on how, like, we are the exception, but a lot of the times we forget, like, we don't think that's applicable
Yeah,
to us. Like, oh, I can do that for myself. Like,
right.
What is...
Yeah, it's like not even an option. Like, it's like you see others and then it just, like, totally skips over you. Like, there's no, like, connect the dots of, like, I deserve that same treatment. And it's so interesting of how separated it can feel, and like, why?
Mm-hmm. Well, we're going to get into not just a little bit about the why, but how we can actually start to do that for ourselves.
Yeah.
Okay, before we get started, we also want to touch on the fact that we all, as human beings, have this drive, desire, whatever you want to call it, to feel loved.
Mm-hmm.
To feel loved, to give love, even if it's hard for some of us to admit. But feeling loved and giving love is something that all human beings share.
Yeah.
No matter your race, ethnicity,
sexual orientation, your religion or non-religious
socioeconomic status.
Yeah. Does not discriminate at all.
Right. So that's something to keep in mind as we talk about how to love ourselves, but also to note there's a lot of criticism, or there's a negative connotation, or the word selfish is thrown around a lot when the topics of loving ourselves or caring for ourselves comes up.
Yes. Yeah, and it looks different for every person because you have your own external factors, even like defining or putting in place of what taking care of yourself or loving yourself would even look like and include, and if it's acceptable or not.
Mm-hmm.
So just things that we have to keep in mind.
Right. And on that note, like, what are some things to help you define what love is for you?
Ooh.
Is the 5 love languages. I'm sure a lot of our listeners have heard of this.
Yeah.
The 5 love languages theory, idea.
Yeah, that sounds good. We'll go with both.
And they really help define how we feel love, how we give love, and how we receive love.
Yeah.
So how do you know when you are loved by others and feel loved by yourself? From yourself.
Right.
To yourself? Because when I say the word, like, by yourself, usually people think, like, oh, you're alone.
Oh, I get what you're saying.
Like, but you are alone.
Yeah.
But with yourself. It's confusing,
You're
but
not
I think
alone. It's me, myself, and I.
Exactly.
Trio here.
Yes. And the 5 love languages is a quick Google. And they have a quiz to find out how you best feel loved, give love, and receive love. And those are physical touch, words of affirmation, gift giving, quality time, and
acts of service.
Acts of service.
My all-time favorite.
Oh, wow. That's your number 1?
Acts of service, I got 12 out of 12, and then gifts was like 10 out of something.
Nice.
Yeah.
Mine was quality time and words of affirmation. Like, they were equal.
We're the exact opposite. Love that. Explains so much.
But these are really helpful to learn about yourself.
Yeah.
So that you can start to build this toolbox / arsenal of how to.
Yeah. Well, I think it's interesting, too, to note, like, I feel like a lot of the times, like, if you've heard of love languages, like, a lot of time it's brought up if you're in a relationship, right? Like, if you're in couples counseling or you're, like, trying to do, like, at-home self-help for you and your partner, or even, like, your friendships, right? The relationships in your life, it's really insightful, right? Like, it helps you see, okay, these are qualities and ways that which I am nourished and feel loved, but it's also an awareness of this is probably how I try to love others.
Exactly.
You know? And what I think is so important is as we were like putting this pod together and what we were going to talk about is even thinking about how much, let's say you find out, like, for example, me and you, right? We just talked about our own love languages. Yeah. Knowing that you just told me yours is quality time and words of affirmation. In my head, I'm like, oh, here are X, Y, and things that I can do to show Ash that, like, I love and appreciate her, right? And it's like, we do that all the time when people share that, especially, like, if we know, like, that's our partner, that's what our friends, our loved ones are.
Yeah.
We start to think about, okay, how can I show them in ways that they will take that in and really feel loved, right? But when do we do that for ourselves?
Literally.
I have never taken the love languages quiz and been like, oh, acts of service, gift giving is my top, and ever thought, okay, Erin, how can you provide yourself these acts of service and this gift giving?
Exactly.
Like, how can you nourish and love yourself in those ways? And I think that just, like, kind of adds to of, like, this is not a habit. This is not a habit of us as humans to think about how to love ourselves in the way we need.
Yes. And when we were preparing and talking about the 5 love languages, we also touched on the reason that it's not a habit, or one reason why it's not a habit is because loving others and paying attention to others and giving care and kindness to others comes from different places. It could come from wanting to feel accepted or validated, or important.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So this maybe undercurrent, unconscious thing that we're trying to attain, receive as individuals. But how do we first acknowledge that and, like, take a pause from doing that and really transition to, is this something I genuinely want to do?
Right. Yeah. Right. Yeah. Is it, I want to do this with good intentions to, like, actively, like, build this relationship and make this person that I care about feel loved? Or is there an underlying root of, I'm doing this because I need or have a desire to feel appreciated, to feel, like, loved in return?
And that underlying thing is just a big warning sign of the lack of effort and energy we're putting into ourselves.
Right. Right. Well, and it also, like, beautiful segue into the next part of this, which is really talking about where did this, like, kind of root underlying issue stem from, right? And we know, and we've said this a million times, every human being is different. Everyone comes from their own life experiences, cultures, traumas, like, it's
values, beliefs.
Yes, it's all different, right? Which is what makes us all so unique, right? But some of, like, the common things that you can think about is, think of the people that raised you. Who were your parents, your guardians, the role models that you grew up with, and did they display or make you feel like taking the time to love yourself and to provide this unconditional love and acceptance for yourself was the norm?
Right.
And if they didn't, then of course we're gonna be, you know, adults here now and being like, I don't even know what that means or what that looks like.
Or what that feels like.
What that feels like, right?
Yes.
If your parents' role models also instilled a really hard standard of not to take care of yourself, that loving yourself is selfish, that you have to focus on everyone else's needs and wants over your own.
Right.
There again, why we would, in some situations, might be, like, overly seeking or throwing love at people to feel that love in return.
Right. Or even growing up with parents, role models that made you feel like who you are isn't worthy for unconditional love.
Was that a bazinga?
That was a bazinga.
Dang.
Whatever a bazinga is, but that was it. Like, just being you is undeserving of unconditional love. Like, major gross.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, no.
Right. And you might have just heard that, and that really hit something for you. And so I think this is a good opportunity to be like, if you need to pause right now and really process that, please do that.
Yes. I think it's just hitting hard because I see, and and hear and get to share the experience of students being like raised that way and learning to interpret their identity that way.
Yeah.
Who I am is undeserving and unworthy. And unconditional love, no, big LOL. Like, and trying to break that pattern or see how that blueprint is just blocking your ability to love yourself is so difficult.
Yeah.
But it's possible.
Right. And a lot of times you don't even know that's what's been instilled or what occurred, you know,
exactly.
like, is a problem because that's all you've known.
Yep.
And so it's very interesting.
It is. And on that note, it's also ingrained by society.
Oh,
right.
Don't even get me started. Society's pressures and standards, I cannot. Literally.
I would say, though, that today's society, although there's a lot of stories, attention to negative things, I would say we have definitely progressed versus 60, 70 years ago.
Right. Well, in some areas.
Some areas. Right?
In some areas.
In some areas. And just having awareness...
Yeah.
You know, that has increased substantially.
Yeah. No, I think so, too. I do agree with that. And then again, it's like, just when I think things are getting better in certain elements, and you're like, yes, this new generation's going to be different, then I see younger people in the new generation that are spewing the same hate.
Yeah, those generational things.
Yeah.
Patterns are so hard to first just recognize you're in one.
Yeah, true.
And then not feel the shame and guilt about being in one and figuring out what can I do about it.
Yeah. Yes.
So, as we've touched on, that perpetuates low self-esteem. Internalized shame is a big one. Yeah. Ooh. I can go for hours and hours on that topic.
Is that a future topic?
Potentially, but we're not going to do that today. And comparison to others.
Yeah. When we live in a society that tells us that we're never enough, we don't do enough, we don't talk, act like X, Y, and Z, then, I mean, why would we provide this unconditional love towards ourselves if what we hear all the time is... You're not good enough.
Right. Or I'm only worthy of unconditional love if I do this.
Yes.
Or if I become this role. If I, get this type of partner or whatever it is.
Right. Exactly. It's conditional based on what parts of life or things that are qualities about you that you have to take on. And it's not based on, like, who you are as your authentic self. And then last one... under this is religion and spirituality.
Ooh.
Which could be 300 different episodes on.
Literally, very spicy topic.
Very spicy.
When it comes to self-love.
Yes. And this is not to say that all religions, all religious places and people that identify, as certain, that this is the case, right? But what we see is there is a lot, think of like religious and spiritual trauma, right? Yep. Or just ideals and principles that teach us that our mission is to serve others. And sometimes that can get really misconstrued to, I only take care of others and I cannot take care of myself, because taking care of myself or doing things for my own well-being is not something that I should be spending my time on. But is something that I should sacrifice for the greater good. And I heard that so much, right? Not only just in like the religion I grew up in, but in others that, that I meet and that I work with.
And we're not saying that serving others is bad.
No. We are literally serving of others in our roles.
Literally. And that's why it's really important to find that definition of what self-love is, because a lot of people that run very amazing nonprofits and volunteer programs, they love themselves by serving others.
Yeah.
So that's something to know. But on that note, it's a great transition to how do we challenge this pattern of totally forgetting about ourselves or sitting in we're the exception of unconditional love. How do we challenge that and make it part of our everyday lives to do something different?
Yeah.
So, number one, which is one of my new goals of this year, which I have been practicing, so I guess this is a check-in.
Look at that.
Is self-gratitude. Gratitude in general.
Yeah.
Ooh, gratitude is just an amazing tool. It's been really like eye-opening for me to challenge myself to be grateful in really difficult situations.
Yep.
And even how I'm now seeing and looking at myself truthfully. So self-gratitude is an act of self-love.
Yeah. And I want to add too, I feel like the term self-love or self-gratitude has kind of become a buzzword in a way that individuals have just been like, oh, okay. Like, oh, okay, you hear that all the time. But, like, what does it mean to truly and authentically be grateful and show gratitude for the person that you are, that is sitting or standing or walking or wherever you are right now listening to this, and just being present with yourself to say, I'm grateful for this body that I have that functions and keeps me going.
Yes.
Like, what does it mean to actually do that on a deeper level than there's the superficial? Be grateful. Show gratitude, you know?
Right. And when we say practice gratitude, self-gratitude, it's like saying something to yourself and inside, like having a thought, creating a thought, or writing it down, or making a post, right? Or taking notes on your phone, journaling, whatever it is. And maybe even challenge yourself to practice gratitude for something you don't like about yourself. Like, you know, I am grateful for
these eyes that be blind and make me wear glasses.
So practicing self-gratitude is key, number one. Secondly is something we touched on a little bit earlier, is having the awareness of this pattern and the potential roots of it. So the pattern of ignoring yourself,
conditionally loving yourself,
putting others before yourself.
Yeah. And spend some work really reflecting on where that stems from. You can do that like on your own. You don't have to be in therapy with someone. Like, you can start thinking and reflecting and asking these questions.
Literally.
To really process, where did I see this? Where did this come up for me?
Or in that note, reflecting at and looking at how people in your life love themselves or don't love themselves. Or how they conditionally love themselves.
Right. Oh, yeah.
So just even taking note of that. Next is practicing giving grace to ourselves. Lots of grace with ourselves and understanding that this won't change overnight.
Yeah. We are not moving mountains in 8 hours.
Absolutely not. Next is learning about what you need to feel safe, rested, restored, nourished, cared for.
Is this Maslow's hierarchy of needs that we're inserting here?
I think we are.
I think we are plugging this. And we could have a little link to a visual, if that would be helpful for those of you that haven't heard of it. But if we spend all this time focusing on what everyone else needs, a lot of the time it goes to the wayside of really knowing what we need.
Exactly.
And so you have to do the work and spend time with yourself, really processing of what that looks like for you. And maybe even for the first time, you're doing that. And that's okay.
That's totally okay. This is a really important one, the next one. Develop positive relationship with your mind, body, and spirit.
Ooh.
Yes.
But can we talk about how hard this is?
So hard.
Like, I mean, this is something that I feel like just could be like one of the most challenging things that you do in life. Because everything in society and a lot of people tell us the exact opposite of having a positive relationship with ourselves, but instead say you need to be this or you need to be that, and you should like aspire to do X, Y, and Z,
or to look like this, or here take this pill, or do this diet, or do this exercise,
right? Or you're not practicing the right religion, like you're going to hell, or you need to do this instead. It's just constant of, I feel like anything that you do, you're always going to be seen as you're doing it wrong. So when do we like fight that and say, listen, I'm not going to listen to these annoying little buzzing voices that always have opinions, and I'm going to actually build a positive relationship with myself for the mind, body, and soul that I have.
Full self-acceptance.
Full self-acceptance. And we are not saying that that's easy.
Absolutely not.
And I'm not going to sit here and tell you that this is something I've mastered, because I have not. And if someone has, maybe you can share some tips on how to fully get to that, because it is something that I think you work on your entire life.
I agree.
It's not something that you're going to have figured out and then nothing ever challenges it. You continuously have to work on that relationship, just like anything else.
Yeah, it's like, what is that term when you're learning a new language? You use it or you lose it.
Oh, right? Yes. Yeah. Use it or lose it. Yes. Well, and would you just become like complacent and not keep like putting in energy into a relationship that you have with a partner or with a friend? Like, no, most times, unless it's toxic, you're going to continuously to put in energy, grow with that person. And that's exactly what you have to do with yourself. This is an ever-evolving relationship that you have to have with yourself, because you're going to grow and you're going to change and you're going to face different obstacles and life experiences. And that's a vital part, is you have to be willing to continuously work to make that relationship a good one.
Yes. I also want to add on this one that sometimes it's difficult because we often take ourselves for granted.
Ooh.
I know part of me practicing gratitude was taking my body for granted, because I'm inside my body all day long, every day of my life. And my body is a vehicle, a tool, right? It's me.
Yeah.
And, you know, when you have something with you every day, all day long, you often forget that how wonderful it is.
Yeah. Yes, exactly. Well, it's like, I also compare that to, you know, like, when you get sick and all of a sudden your nose is stopped up and then you're trying to lay down and you can't breathe out your nose and you're like, oh my gosh, I just wish like I could go back to when I could breathe out my nose, right? You're more like, oh, I should appreciate being able to breathe normally when I go to bed. Yes. That's what I associate it with, right? Of like being like grateful, right? And not taking for granted like the things that we have, that you're able to do the things that you do. Like, it's important.
Very. Another thing that we can do in our everyday lives is be more intentional about spending time on yourself. Yes. And this can look like so many things. This could look like taking care of your house, your space, your environment, maybe your car.
Yeah.
I know a lot of people that don't take care of their car. And
she's calling me out right now.
And a few other people that that, you know, it's difficult.
Yeah.
When it's something we use every day or almost every day, right?
Right.
Plug in to music, a blog. Try new things to learn about yourself. Maybe, you know, I want to try this. I've never tried it. Let me see if I like it or not.
Yeah. What foods are you putting in your body? Are you taking care of it? Are you taking vitamins? Are you taking medications that are helpful for you? Like, this is not just putting on a face mask and lighting a candle and being like, well, bam. I mean, you can do that. Like, that's fine. But, like, how do we, like, take care of ourselves in intentional ways to nourish our mind, body, and souls?
You know, maybe picking out your outfit for the day before, or having snacks or lunch packed for yourself for the next day.
Yes. Make sure that you are planning intentional social time and things that you enjoy. Like, I hear so many students that are like, well, like, I used to love, like, going to Zumba 3 times a week, but I haven't gone since the semester started because I'm just studying. And it's like, why?
Exactly.
Like, you deserve to enjoy things that nourish you. You can't be studying 24/7. That's not effective studying, and that could be a whole other topic and podcast. But like, how do you plan intentional time for yourself?
And it's easy to, like, if you're already using a planner and if you already, like, are used to schedules, like, it's work, so schedule it in. It's okay. Like, mark it off.
Don't just put your school on that planner.
Hold yourself accountable.
Exactly.
Yes. And lastly is to become aware of negative self-talk, regret, that internalized shame that we touched on, judgments. The phrase I should. Right?
Yes. I'm a culprit of that. I do that all the time.
Just become aware of that and notice it. Try not to beat yourself up that you did it. And how can you challenge yourself to reframe it or change a sentence where it's more positive in terms of practicing gratitude? Let's give an example. Oh, I should work out. Let me go to the gym, right? That entails a lot, like getting your bag ready, getting yourself to the gym, coming back home. How about just being grateful that maybe you can have 10 minutes at home to do, like, some stretches? That's still physical movement. Exactly. Or some crunches, you know?
Because the shoulds are just judgy. The shoulds are just judgy little things. And honestly, it always makes me feel like it's a boss, like a bossy tone. That's, like, passive aggressive.
Not a motivating boss.
It's not motivating. It makes me feel like, ooh, I just don't even want to listen to you. And so you saying I should go to the gym, I don't want to do anything related to the gym now.
Exactly.
You know? Like, instead, what if I reframe that of being like, I think I might want to move my body a little bit. So maybe here are some options. I could do an at-home, like, dance video. I could go for a walk outside, maybe take my dog or my cat. I could go to the gym. Maybe I could look at the gym class schedule. Like, even reframing it has a huge impact. Okay, so we're about to transition into an interactive piece for this podcast. So what we want our listeners to do is get comfy if you're sitting down, maybe do some deep breathings to get you grounded where you are. If you happen to be walking around, maybe you just kind of take a pause, stand still, lean up against a tree, sit on a bench, whatever. But what we want you to do is imagine that you are on the side of a mountain walking up a hiking trail. And this hiking trail isn't the easiest trail. It's got some mud patches, maybe some rocks, some fallen limbs you gotta walk over. The altitude is kind of high, so it might be beginning to get a little more difficult to breathe as you go up.
Maybe you see a storm coming.
Maybe there's a mix of cool and then hot. The sun is beating on you. And what you notice is that walking up this hiking trail, it's not the easiest thing, right? It's a little difficult. But now I want you to imagine that there is a backpack on you. And this backpack is filled with a lot of different heavy rocks. And these heavy rocks all signify different things that maybe are negative self-talk or aspects of things you saw growing up, or society's pressures, or religious and spiritual things that all tell you and add to the idea that you must conditionally love yourself, or to provide no love or acceptance to yourself and only focus on everyone else. And through this visual, you notice that on top of the hiking trail already being really difficult, which we will signify as life and life experiences, you now have this backpack that you've added on with all these rocks that make it even harder. And although we can't control the hiking trail, we can't control the weather, we can't control if there's limbs or rocks down, we can't control that the altitude makes us breathe a little bit harder, what we can control is what we carry in this backpack. So as you continue walking up this trail, I want you to imagine that you're taking out one rock at a time, and you can decide what that rock represents, and you're setting it down and leaving it on the hiking trail as you keep going up. And this is something that you can continue to return to and listen to, but is a great reminder of when we unconditionally love ourselves, or we do not show love and acceptance to ourselves, it adds a lot of heavy rocks to a life that can already be really difficult. So why not do what we can to make our life easier and take off the really heavy backpack? So as this visual comes to a close, we want to remind you, take a few deep breaths. You can stay in this reflection and drop as many rocks as you need to, and you can come back to this as often as you need to. But we hope that this is something that allows you to kind of see how you can take back control over what impacts how you choose to or don't love and accept yourself.
So I want to compliment your visual.
Thank you.
And that experience, I hope the listeners loved it just as much as I did.
And let's wrap this up by talking about some ways to cultivate that self-love and acceptance. So we've talked about this a lot throughout this, but noticing where are our self-judgments. What are those things that we are really judgy and critical about ourselves about, right? Like, what does that look like? When do we have a tendency to think these things about ourselves and these come up?
Yeah.
Notice the impact on your body and your emotions, right? Like, how does this affect you by not showing yourself this unconditional love and support and acceptance, right? What does that look like? Acknowledge the patterns for trying to help yourself, right? What does that look like? Is it something that's effective for you? Is it something that you kind of do half-heartedly and don't really put a lot of intention, time, and effort into? Trace the pattern to its roots. We've talked a lot about this. Really reflect and spend some time figuring out, where did this start? Where did this idea of loving everyone else but ourselves unconditionally, right? Or practicing this conditional love, where does that root and stem from? Send yourself compassion and forgiveness. How often do you do this? How often do you sit and just show yourself this compassion and be forgiving of yourself for learning and growing and making mistakes and not being perfect? Because I bet that you do it a lot to everyone else. Start welcoming the parts that have been rejected. I'm sure something might pop up for you immediately, like whether it be your body, whether it be what you're going to school for, or religious ties, or whatever it may be. how do we, instead of rejecting those things, which is not not unconditional love, how do we start appreciating and welcome those as part of who we are and our authentic selves? Honor your strengths. What are those things that you're really good at? Do you spend time really being proud and honoring those things about you? Connect to your future self. So think about, what is the person, the self that you want to be in 5, 10, 50 years from now? What does that look like? If we are wanting to aspire to be our authentic, true selves, then that means that we are unconditionally loving and accepting us for who we are. So connect with that. Have an idea of what that would look like for you. And at the end of this, we want to thank you, of course, for listening to this episode. And we want to leave you with a quote,
As always.
And this quote is by Kristen Neff, who is a self-compassion guru, and I'm obsessed.
I love her.
Thank you, Ash, for introducing me to her.
Also, quick Google.
She's got some good stuff. But the quote for this episode is, unlike self-criticism, which asks if you're good enough, self-compassion asks, what is good for you? How many times do you think in your head, am I good enough? Is what I'm doing good enough? Right? And instead saying, what is actually good for me? What would benefit me?
Oof.
Right?
Powerful.
Yes. So reflect on that. Reflect on all the stuff that we've talked about today, though. And with that, we are done and finishing this episode. Yes. So thank you so much for tuning in.
Thank you for listening.
And stay tuned for next month's podcast, which will be on body image, right in time for spring break coming up and all the pressures associated with bikini season. So we're super excited about next month's topic. Be sure to follow our blog, our YouTube channel, and check out this month's episode and reading as well as past months. Follow us on social media. And we will see you next time. Bye.
Bye.